Hey, so I had a couple folks actually send me a video of somebody earlier, some coach talking about the difference between full range of motion squats and quarter squats. And I wouldn't even say that he goes into the differences in this video. He just heavily biases quarter squats and says how they're the thing that makes you faster, cites a paper, or I should say cherry picks a paper rather, and says, well, that has direct transfer to making you faster. Okay, so number one is he cherry picking whatever research exists? Number two, who are the folks that are being researched in the paper? Well, in this particular case, it was very elite level athletes, and context for whatever it is you're working on or whatever your goals are is very important. So to go through and cherry pick and say, well, this is better than this. Anytime you hear absolutes, it's a huge red flag. So somebody goes through and says, well, full squats aren't great and quarter squats are the greatest thing since sliced bread or whatever. That right there is something where, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just click out of this, because this guy is obviously heavily supporting his personal bias. He's not being objective and, providing proper context or citing the fact that this is dealing with the most elite of the most elite. Now, quarter squats may be fine, may be appropriate. I don't know, given the situation, but generally those are going to be a good thing to do in season. And the primary reason for that is they leave the athlete less sore, because you're going to have more muscle soreness as you go through greater ranges of motion, right? So if you're going through a deep full range of motion squat, then that's a further distance that the athlete must travel. And that's fine. It's not good nor bad. It's just what's happening. The equation for work is force times distance. So if you have a relatively tall athlete who's performing full range of motion squat, that's a lot of damage, and that's fine. Damage is not good or bad. It's just what's happening, and it's something that must be recovered from. So when you're selecting exercises for whatever your goals are, none of them are good or bad. It's just understand that there's consequences that are going to have to be accounted for. And the same thing when you're looking at whatever your goals are, it comes down to, how many years of training experience do you have? A lot of people are under the impression that they need to follow exactly what elite level athletes are doing. Okay, so a few things here is elite level athletes are very dominant with specific skills that make them world class. Okay, from there, a lot of them, usually them meaning like the elite athletes, a lot of them can benefit greatly from a relatively simple, basic strength training program, okay? They don't necessarily need highly complex things. A lot of times it is they continue to master the basics. They have a higher order of magnitude that goes into each repetition because they're world class at turning on and turning off muscle groupings. So they can apply more force, which again is just what's happening. So they have to account for that in terms of recovery, right? So there are highly complex programs out there that you can go and find. For example, like if you go and look into old USSR data or Russian literature, you can find these highly complex programs that are dealing with the most elite of the most elite. And they're awesome. They're really cool to look at and nerd out on and all that stuff. But understand that with USSR and Russian literature, when you start seeing those programs, they literally select for talent very, very early on. And then they find who's going to be predisposed from an anthropometric standpoint of likely having success in a given sport. Further, they have qualifications before they have an athlete move up. So they have a very strict, organized system. Then the other question here is how much of the athletes' lives did they control during the athlete's career. Because if they're controlling for every variable, yeah, sure, they might have better outcomes. These athletes are going to have massages multiple times a day. They're going to have perfect nutrition. They're going to go to sleep on time. They're not going to go out and party and do all this stuff. The point is that they can control for so much that then when they introduce or manipulate a variable or two, they can get very, very precise. And these athletes have earned the right to do these highly complex programs. But by and large, most people don't need complex programming. They need to do the basics very well, and they need to continue that pursuit for the rest of their life. And then it's just a manipulation of volumes and intensities. And then are there other things that you can add in as far as exercise variations? Sure, absolutely. But don't just start, changing all these variables at once, and don't just start changing variations for the sake of changing variations. Have a very good reason why you're going to rotate an exercise in or out. And then just understand, have context for the athlete. Like if we're talking, is the athlete in season or out of season? Because that's going to be different things that we can do based on working around practices and games and things of that nature. So anyway, just my point here is as you look through social media and you start to see influencers post things or whatever, just be very careful about just jumping into stuff, because before you just jump into a program that you see that's relatively complex, you have to appreciate the fact of all the years that have come before it, before the athlete got to that point, rather than just jumping into whatever XYZ program that you see on social. So again, for most people, if you squat, deadlift, push and pull vertically and horizontally, carry, you jump, you throw, you do some Olympic lift variations. If you do those things at least once a week, you're in a pretty good spot already. Can you do certain things more often than that? Sure, absolutely. It's just a question of how much you're going to do, and then have you accounted for the fact that that must be recovered from. So if you have any questions, drop me a DM or email travis@dhpcoaching.net.